good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, based on where you are in the world. My name is Giuseppe. I'm part of the DevRel team at IoTeX, and I'm glad to have Larry, Connor, Colleen, and Dare here from the IoTeX and Solana Foundation. So let's get rolling. Let's get going with a quick round of intro of ourselves, and then we'll get into the weeds of this space and why we're doing this, what the whole thought behind this was. But let's maybe start with our Solana friends. So maybe Dare, if you want to start, and then we'll pass to Colleen, and then my IoTeX peeps.
Once again, thank you for having me. My name is Dare, and I work at the Solana Foundation on the business development side. And on the business development side, focus on new initiatives encompassing DePIN and AI, and basically just however we can help ecosystem teams grow within DePIN is what we're focused on. So, happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for being here. And let's pass the ball to Colleen. We'll do a quick round, and then we get going. Just what are you doing? What have you been up to these days?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me as well. Like Dare, I'm part of the team at the foundation and focused on sort of BD ecosystem growth stuff. And I've been here for about 3 years, and I've sort of split my time working with a few different sort of verticals within the ecosystem. One of them is games. One of them is what we call the sort of creator economy. And then the third, and one that's very sort of near and dear to my heart and is relevant for this conversation, is I work a lot with the DePIN ecosystem on Solana. And as Dare mentioned, we're really here to help accelerate people building awesome stuff in DePIN. And so that's how we've gotten to know the IoTeX team. And so we're excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, actually, I really enjoyed the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, but we'll get more into that and later on. Let's just get Larry and then Connor to introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name is Larry, head of business development here at IoTeX and part of the founding team. So we've been building in this DePIN sector for the past 5 or so years now. It wasn't called DePIN back then. It went through a lot of different names for the category: blockchain and IoT, Internet of Trusted Things, MachineFi. But we're really glad to see the DePIN sector just expanding and growing, and excited to be talking about kind of some of our future plans with the Solana ecosystem and how we're planning to grow DePIN together on this space.
Yeah, awesome. I couldn't agree more. Let's just get Connor, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah, hey everyone. Good to see you here. My name's Connor. I work in BD at IoTeX, specifically covering DePIN for the most part. Been in the DePIN space for a while now, even before had the terminology DePIN as well. I was like an early helium miner, co-founded 2 DePIN mining startups, and just have been really interested in the intersection of the real world and blockchains and creating token economies that can provide different kind of services like wireless connectivity or energy or whatever they are. So yeah, super excited about DePIN. Have been in the space for a while and looking forward to this Twitter space as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm super glad to have you guys. I mean, you're all, DePIN masters. I'm actually, on a selfish note, looking forward to learning a lot from this conversation with you guys. Before we get rolling, just a couple of, housekeeping things. If anybody in the audience wants to maybe ask any of you guys questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I am not sure that we'll actually get to maybe audience questions, as we're pretty tight on time, but I encourage all 4 of you guys, if you maybe find some interesting questions there in the audience, to maybe later on just comment in your own time. And we were trying to, I'm on Eastern time, so anyway, we'll try to finish this 15 minutes to the hour, and hopefully we'll pack a lot of interesting conversations and a lot of interesting information for our communities. So I wanted to get this started sort of from the end, like one of those movies, but I want to just briefly intro this by talking about what the overarching storyline is, right? We feel, at least, being in touch with the IoTeX community and various other DePIN communities, that somehow, there is a thought of, like a competition, who takes the crown, for DePIN, for the DePIN market, etc. I think the goal with this space, and from the conversations that I've had with all of you guys, is to actually show or talk about synergies and talk about this symbiotic collaboration to actually, help DePIN builders, investors, and founders find the best sort of like modules in to build their own projects. So I think that's a really interesting aspect. Again, this is just a hint. We'll get much deeper into this. We'll talk more about modularity, how the two stacks could be used to, picking sort of and choosing the best of both worlds. But yeah, just wanted to sort of give this as like the overarching storyline that we're trying to, basically the main message here. So let's start with defining a couple of things. First of all, what is DePIN? I'm sure our community has been exposed to it. I'm sure the Solana community as well. Being in this space, I'm sure you'll know. But it's good to do a little freshen up, and also I'd like to know how you guys describe it. So I think I would like to get Connor to maybe talk a little bit about DePIN in general. You wrote some very interesting blogs. You've been in the space for a while. You wrote a very interesting DePIN blog, RWA blog, etc. So I really enjoy your perspective on DePIN, and yeah, if you can just go through your definition, some use cases, interesting projects, and then we'll pass the ball to Daria from the sort of Solana.
Yeah, no, happy to kick us off. So, DePIN as a term or a sector of crypto, I think is relatively new, probably 6 months to a year old, but it's been really good to have one kind of like uniting acronym or term that we can all get behind, and it helps with kind of marketing, visibility, a sense of community from all the projects that are building in it. But the acronym DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks, and it's basically a very broad term that can encompass any project that's looking to build out physical infrastructure. So whether that's like a wireless network made of Wi-Fi hotspots, or whether that is a network of like EV charging stations, right, that are put up and can charge cars, building any kind of physical infrastructure network in the real world, but doing so in a decentralized manner. So instead of having one large company like AT&T, raising billions of dollars, needing probably millions of employees to run this whole network, it's the idea that you can do so in a decentralized fashion by motivating people around the world with token incentives that provide some kind of like financial upside or financial exposure to the network that they're helping build, as well as some level of governance over how the network's constructed, how the rewards are flowing, etc. Yeah, that's basically the idea, is to have physical infrastructure be built out in a decentralized way, kind of controlled and owned by the people that are contributing to that network rather than, just one company. So it's a very powerful concept. I would say it was probably first made very popular or viral by the Helium project back in 2019. So Helium was this really ambitious idea to build a global IoT network, so an Internet of Things network for very low bandwidth use cases. So not like surfing the internet or watching Netflix, more like sending sensor data, tracking packages, tracking like temperature and humidity, kind of like low bandwidth use cases that don't have a ton of data flowing through them. But they wanted to build this global IoT network. They tried for several years with a purely Web 2 kind of model, whether they were raising money to go deploy these IoT hotspots, and they weren't really seeing much success because it was very difficult to overcome the cold start problem of building two sides of a marketplace at once. So they were trying to build out both the supply of IoT hotspots around the world to provide that connectivity, and also the demand side of like the usage of that network. But no one really wants to use a network that has very limited coverage, right? And then no one wants to build out a network for use cases that might not exist yet, or like going to be there for sure in terms of justifying your investment in building out the IoT network. So what they did in 2019 is kind of took some inspiration from Bitcoin and Filecoin and adopted a token incentive mechanism and decided to try to build this network in a decentralized way, where anyone around the world could buy an IoT hotspot, set it up, provide IoT coverage, wireless connectivity, and then earn tokens based on the quality of the coverage they were providing, and also kind of how much data was flowing through their individual nodes, like what their contribution was to the network. So that they saw a ton of success. I mean, they're probably the largest DePIN project, I would say, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, have built out a truly global IoT network on the supply side, which is fantastic to see. They're still working on, getting a ton of demand on the demand side for the IoT network, but I think what's even more interesting on the demand side is their recent shift in focus towards cellular connectivity. So this is like a type of connectivity that I think we can all imagine a little more easily, is like having your cell phone connected to the internet, right? Being able to watch Netflix on that, or surf Instagram. They have partnered with T-Mobile to provide like a nationwide plan that, like, truly works everywhere. And then whenever users are near Helium mobile hotspots, which are either their Wi-Fi or cellular hotspots now, those users can roam onto those hotspots rather than onto T-Mobile's network. And so it's like this really interesting concept of a mobile hybrid network operator, where they have some of their own kind of people created coverage. They're also leveraging T-Mobile's kind of nationwide super high quality coverage, and they're really building and innovating and focusing towards cellular connectivity rather than IoT, which I think makes a lot of sense. So it's a very long-winded answer to say kind of like, what is DePIN, what's probably the foundational, most interesting project that we've seen so far, with Helium being that. But there's a ton of other projects in other sectors like energy, and then a lot of kind of like digital resources that are being provided as well, like decentralized storage with Filecoin, decentralized compute with Akash and Bitensor and Render. So a ton of interesting stuff going on in DePIN, and super excited to see what new projects emerge over the next few years.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I was just about to add, besides sort of like the bigger ones, there are like ton of like of these smaller, very community, very builder focused projects that are spawning, and they're providing actually great utility. And in situations where maybe a Web2 counterpart in whatever sector would not be able to do so as effectively. And I also find it very interesting, Connor, that basically you described the famous DePIN flywheel when you were talking basically about the problems that Helium faced at the beginning, and then how they went to solve it by building supply, demand in turn, and then investment, etc. Great, thanks for that. Pass the ball to Dara. And yeah, we failed to mention that Helium is hosted on Solana. So Solana is hosting some of the largest DePINs right now. So I'd like to know your 2 cents on basically, DePIN use cases, what actually makes you excited about this sector.
Yeah, I think Connor did a really good job of defining DePIN as a whole and using Helium as an example. I guess to kind of echo off that, more focusing on the token incentivization aspect of things, DePIN is really powerful in the sense of being able to incentivize a group of people to add inputs that power your network. And using another project as an example, Hive Mapper, is something that's really powerful. And focusing on the decentralization aspect, Hive Mapper is a decentralized mapping network where they incentivize people to install a dash cam into their vehicle and take high quality images that they use to create a decentralized map. And this is as opposed to Google Maps and different large mapping giants in that sense. And it's very interesting about their network when you think about it from a decentralization aspect and the token incentivization aspect, because they're decentralized and they have a large scale of people that are all over the country, the world, basically adding to their decentralized map. They're able to add up to date, high quality images to their mapping network. And if they're able to scale to a very large user base down the line, this is something that Google couldn't do, because Google uses these very expensive vehicles that power their mapping network. And that's a very clear and very unique way that DePIN can be used to solve an issue. And the issue being on the mapping side of the ladder is, because there's a monopoly within the mapping industry, companies sometimes have to pay very large amounts of fees to access a Web2 mapping network. And it's a very unique way, basically, that DePIN is able to solve different issues. But yeah, I think Hive Mapper, and like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different really cool projects that are building within the DePIN space that are solving real issues.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like you were saying, in certain cases, a DePIN project, so a community incentivized network, can actually benefit the end user and create a better service than its Web 2 counterpart. Sort of like when you were talking about, maybe Hype Mapper, or at least potential of Hype Mapper versus a Google Maps, for example. Great, thanks for that. I want to take some like a half step back here, and maybe let's do a little bit of not an introduction, but a quick conversation on the tech that both IoTeX and Solana provide for DePIN projects, but also in a little bit more general sense. Let's talk a little bit about our own landscape, ecosystem, and why certain projects, have chosen, for example, to be hosted on Solana, and why certain DePIN projects are using the IoTeX stack. And then eventually, after that, I'd like to sort of like talk about synergies, but I think we'll organically get to that. And also, just quickly, if you guys want to ask each other questions as well, I'm just here to sort of like facilitate the conversation, keep us on track with time and everything. But feel free. I love this to be like a open conversations for us all. So let's have Larry. Larry's been with IoTeX, I think, from like the beginning. So I think is the best person to talk a little bit about the IoTeX landscape, our tech, and let's maybe reeling towards the DePIN sector.
Yeah, I would love to give like an overview of what we've been building throughout the years and what the current state in the future looks like, right? So for those that don't know, IoTeX has been around since 2017, building technology to support DePIN. It's a complete tech stack for DePIN. We started as a layer 1 base chain, and that's been live on mainnet since 2019. To date, processed hundreds of millions of transactions. And as Solana well knows, it's extremely important to build out these secure and scalable base layers before you start to go into the layer 2, layer 3, et cetera, of the world. So we focus a lot in the early days to build out this secure base layer, but that's not all that's needed to empower DePIN builders, right? Our latest endeavors have really been about building first of its kind middleware and tooling that is machine focused and makes DePIN builders' lives easier. So we've designed our entire tech stack to be very modular, allowing builders to kind of pick and choose what modules they want to incorporate into their projects. And these modules work with all types of layer 1s, including Solana and IoTeX. So kind of imagine it as different Lego blocks where, regardless of what layer 1 you're settling the activity to, all those building blocks and Lego blocks are usable on Polygon, on Ethereum, on IoTeX, on Solana, on all these other layer 1s, right? So some of our modular products are things like device SDKs that help give all types of smart devices on-chain identities. One of our major products is called WebStream, which is an off-chain compute environment with zero-knowledge proofs, allowing people to convert raw data from machines into Web3 ready proofs. And that's one big part of how we envision collaborating with Solana, is to bring privacy to DePIN. And there's other tools like IoTube and IoPay, which are like bridges and wallets that are more DePIN centric, right? So the product of all of these modules is we really took a 10,000-foot view of like, what does it take to launch a DePIN from scratch, and taking the lessons of the DePIN OGs like Helium and HiveMapper and some of the older projects, we start to understand, okay, what do builders actually want to build themselves, and what tools and templates would they use or really desire if they didn't have to build all this from scratch, right? Giving devices trusted identities, grabbing and storing data from these devices in a secure way, computing over this data to generate proofs of physical work, submitting these proofs to various blockchains to distribute crypto assets to the device owners, and how do we ensure privacy throughout this end-to-end process? It's a lot of steps required to build out a DePIN, and IoTeX is really kind of try to have a fit for purpose solution that makes builders' lives a lot easier throughout this end-to-end process, right? And again, in a very modular fashion. And in addition to technology, I think there's a lot of other stuff that's needed, right? From building a DePIN from scratch, things like liquidity, tokenomics support, community bootstrapping. And so we've also been hard at work building initiatives like DePIN Scan, which aggregates a lot of the device data and metadata related to DePINs in one place for people to explore what's going on in the DePIN sector. And then Connor can talk to talk about our DePIN Liquidity Hub, which helps people, list their tokens on our DEX, from different ecosystems, and have one place for community to discover new DePIN tokens. So it really takes a huge effort, right? And our job here as infrastructure providers and tooling providers is to talk to customers, to see what they really want, and to build technology that supports them, right? So I think that's a long overview of what IoTeX has been up to. But yeah, our job is to support DePIN builders with cutting edge tech and tools.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Larry. Thanks for the overview. And yeah, as we had hinted at the beginning, about the whole modularization of the stack, that's needed for DePINs, as they sort of like encompass many different aspects of, from hardware to software to cryptography, etc. So I think it's really important to offer, a very flexible type of infrastructure. And yeah, you hinted at something, that I think we'll go into a little bit more depth later about, ZK proofs and how those could be integrated with how those will be able to be sent to Solana contracts. And, we had a great conversation with Kuleen just a couple of weeks back. But before we do that, Kuleen, I'd like to ask you, your overview of the Solana ecosystem. I will admit, I wasn't too familiar with Solana and how to build on Solana. And so I have been doing a little bit of research, reading through the docs, experimenting with the developer ecosystem, and I am fascinated. To be honest with you guys, I can't wait to hang this up and just go back and read the docs, because it's really interesting. I found the whole concept of a decentralized world computer that can agree on time and work synchronously fascinating, back when Solana was Loom. And yeah, I'd just like to learn more about the ecosystem from your point of view, Kuleen. And as Larry was saying, what kind of other products besides tech, DePINs can find in your ecosystem.
Absolutely, let's get into it. So, and actually, I'll touch on some of the stuff that Larry mentioned, because I actually thought this like super interesting and complementary to our focuses, at least here, sort of with respect to Solana and the Solana network. But I think the sort of first question was just a little bit about Solana itself. Like, I can give a very broad overview, like, hey, what is the sort of mission with the network? What are we trying to accomplish broadly? And then I'll double click into specifically DePIN and how we think about that space. So you'd actually already alluded to this a little bit in your comment, but the really, really broad vision for Solana was trying to achieve consensus on information in a sort of decentralized system at as close to the speed of light as possible. Like basically, like there's a limit to how fast information can travel. That limit, as far as we know with physics today, is the speed of light. And Anatoly is sort of the founder whose technical vision Solana is, like that was sort of his broad mission. It's like, hey, how can we get information transfer and a sort of decentralized system to achieve consensus on the state of things as close to that physical barrier as possible? So that's like the super, super high level mission. And that's really informed why Solana is built the way it is. And I'm not an engineer, and so I will try to sort of not get out of my depth here, but at a sort of very basic level, the thing that makes Solana unique, and certainly made it unique at time of launch, was the fact that it was very focused on parallelization. That EVM, for example, which has been historically the dominant framework by which people have built layer one networks, is a very serial network in which like transactions have a strict order and must have an order, and serial is generally speaking slow. If you can do things in parallel, that's good. So those are one of the fundamental things with how Solana was built, was to enable as much parallelization as possible, because parallelization is just faster, and also parallelization makes better use of hardware. So the other bet with Solana was that, hey, hardware and Moore's law have for a very long time now consistently sort of played out and gotten better. And can we build a network that takes advantage of the progress that we make consistently in how performant and parallelized chips are? So that is at a so very high level, like what the goal with Solana was and how like the network was architected. Today, what you see on Solana is that there's just a ton of stuff going on. Like the very broad notion of reaching consensus on information at the speed of light turns out has like many, many applications. So at a very high level, right, there's a whole DeFi ecosystem. So actually decentralized finance was really the first thing that took up on Solana. people are building central limit order books and all kinds of crazy stuff. And now actually, especially the last few weeks, the decentralized finance apps on Solana are the most active in the ecosystem, even more active than the sort of stalwarts in Ethereum, like whatever Aave or Uniswap, etc. So that was the first thing. After that, we actually saw a huge renaissance in the world of NFTs on Solana, whether that's sort of monkey JPEGs or one-of-one art. And that was facilitated by marketplaces like Magic Eden or Tensor more recently that are letting people sort of buy, trade, and experience these NFTs. And so there's like a whole vibrant NFT community on Solana. Games have become a huge thing with games like, Aurora, Star Alice, Geno Pets, Mixmob doing all kinds of things on chain. And there's a bunch of payment stuff going on, commerce stuff. Like, it's sort of actually like very difficult to cover it all in a short fashion. But the thing that we've actually been super focused on that's most relevant for this conversation is DePIN. And the things I'll say about DePIN and like how we think about trying to have the Solana ecosystem really facilitate DePIN, there's a few components to it. One is that Solana is a piece of technology, and how can we make that as relevant for DePIN builders as possible? So we're always, one of the things I really appreciate about DePIN builders is that they're generally very pragmatic people. They're like, hey, like I have a problem I want to solve. I want to generate really high quality mapping data as cheaply and effectively as possible. I want to have a wireless network that has really high coverage and performs. Like they have a very practical goal. And so for them, what they're trying to do is like, hey, what network lets me accomplish my goal as efficiently as possible? So efficiently means least fees, fastest performance, secure, reliable, right? And so that's what we are striving to do is accomplish those things so that if you're a pragmatic person, like Solana is it's just the best thing for you to use at a base layer. The other thing that we're trying to do from a technical perspective, aside from those like core things, so speed, low cost, reliability, security, is have it be a base layer that is easy for people to build modular tools on top of. The more you try to make one piece of technology everything for everyone, the more you're gonna like be pulled in different directions and have it not be good at anything. And so we're really trying to keep Solana, the network, as like an open layer, and then have people build very use case specific modular tools on top of that. And so one of the things we're always listening to is like, hey, what are the kinds of modular tools people are interested in building? And how do we make sure the network serves the needs of those tools? So that's why we've been pretty excited to get to know the IoTeX team and chat. And I think we'll probably cover this in more detail later. But so there's a whole piece around this, which is like, how does Solana as a piece of technology enable the needs of the DePIN community? The second is Solana as an economy. So one of the powerful things about DePIN is like what the superpower that DePIN networks can tap into. One of the superpowers is the fact that they can provide incentives in the form of tokens that align the long-term, hopefully, and if designed the right way, those sort of long-term motivations of the network builders, the network contributors, and the users through the use of tokens. And the economy around those tokens is something that Solana is very good at facilitating because you have a rich DeFi ecosystem, you have the infrastructure to trade these tokens, transfer them, like the wallets that provide a good UX for people, right? So there's this whole thing around how do you make the economy for DePIN projects like as seamless and efficient and effective as possible. And so we think a lot about that as well, working with the likes of HiveMapper, Helium, et cetera. So to me, I'll try to stop rambling now, but like hopefully that's a little bit about Solana. And then with respect to DePIN, I think for us, it's like there's like two major buckets. One is making the piece of technology as relevant for DePIN builders as possible. And then the second kind of big bucket is making sure that the economy that's facilitated by Solana really helps these networks grow.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. It was actually, comprehensive and interesting, and there is a lot to unpack. I'm going to try to keep these 10 more minutes long. So there are two things that you said that I want to touch upon, and I would like Connor to actually unpack these concepts. One is you talked about the economy of DePIN, and as Larry had hinted at earlier, I'd like Connor to talk a little bit more about that from the IoTeX perspective, about the Liquidity Hub and what we can offer for DePIN projects in various ecosystems. And then after that, I want to talk about the other things that you said about DePIN. And so the having various projects such as, let's say, ourselves, build modules that can then work on Solana, and I want to touch upon our zero knowledge centric infrastructure. But let's talk economy of DePIN first, and we'll jump into ZK interoperability.
Okay, so yeah, the Liquidity Hub that we just launched is basically a way to utilize our existing tools and infrastructure that we've built over the past 5 years. A lot of like kind of layer one type specific tools and infrastructure, like a fully functional DEX, like a multi-chain bridge, a multi-chain wallet. So we're thinking about ways to combine these tools to help deepen projects. And one way that we're doing that specifically is with the DePIN Liquidity Hub. So essentially what we're doing is bridging DePIN tokens from various chains, Polygon, Ethereum, soon to be Solana as well, and bridging those tokens to the IoTeX L1, creating liquidity pools on our DEX for them so that liquidity can be added, people can trade with low slippage, and then partnering with those projects to do things like match liquidity, do some co-marketing to let their communities know, like, hey, you can now trade this token in a liquid, secure way on our DEX, and also trying to get some of like the kind of like synergistic or aggregate effects of having many DePIN tokens be available for trade in one place. I think there's like some synergistic effects there of like you go to trade, say, the Honey Hive Mapper token, and then you see the Demo token. You're like, oh, what's Demo? That's interesting. It's listed here. It must be legit. Like, let me take a look. So we've seen some good kind of like initial product market fit. I think we have around $150,000 of liquidity on our DEX for 6 DePIN tokens. We've got some good kind of trade volume going through every day as well. So yeah, it's just a great initiative to try to help these DePIN projects take one more thing off their plate in terms of getting their tokens to be liquid and tradable in a kind of easy, secure way.
Awesome, thank you. Cool. So then let's jump to the second part of the topic that I wanted to touch upon, which is sort of like related to this whole overarching, topic that, we had talked about at the beginning, which is, our the IoTeX stack, Solana Tech, and various other modules for specifically DePIN projects. They're not mutually exclusive, but they're actually complementary. And so I think it's really exciting, if I were, for example, a DePIN builder or a founder, to sort of like pick and choose what the best solution cater to the project that I want to build is. And so maybe, Larry, I'd like to pick your brain on, quote unquote, the IoTeX bet that as the zero knowledge centric architecture for our sort of like, scaling solution is the way to go for DePIN. How does the ZK work into scaling DePIN projects, and why is off-chain computation important in terms of a DePIN architecture, and especially the verifiability of this off-chain computation, which then can trigger verifiable logic on chain, be it a smart contract in like, an EVM ecosystem or a program in the Solana ecosystem. Yeah, we talked about it last night. But this I think is very interesting. And then I would like to know what Dare thinks about it, and then we'll wrap up.
For sure. Yeah. Giuseppe and I last night were in New York City at the Masari Crypto Theses 2024, where they're providing all their hot trends for 2024 and predictions. I think 3 of them that really stood out, they were talking about a lot, were DePIN, verifiable compute, and zero knowledge, right? And I think if you think about the intersection of these 3 categories, that's really what IoTeX and Solana are really excited to be collaborating on, is DePIN focused data, which is a high streaming volume of data from all different types of smart devices, being able to compute over that data to generate proofs of physical work or proofs of real world activity, things like my vehicle or my hotspot has created this much value and generated this much income. And, as the owner of these devices, I should be rewarded in this much of a crypto asset, whether it's a token or an NFT. And finally, doing all of that in a privacy preserving way. I think that's where the ZK piece comes in. For a long time, this was, kind of touted as the holy grail of, compute for the Web3 space, is doing very high volumes of compute in a verifiable way and in a privacy preserving way that connects the physical world and the digital world, right? So I think really seeing is believing. We're going to have a lot of really cool POCs and demos where we're taking real device data and generating these proofs of physical work. And this template, ZK is still a little far from production. A lot of people are using ZK to scale layer twos, but the promise of ZK is really about the privacy preserving compute part. So with the traction that we see on DePIN's building on Solana, we would love to bring IoTex's state-of-the-art ZK technology to those applications and DePIN networks, and also foster a lot of the DePINs that are homegrown on IoTeX as well. So that's kind of a short preview of what we're up to. I think both the Solana community and the IoTeX community can expect a lot of updates on this and a lot of showcases of the demos that we've been working on with some of the top DePIN projects. But it's just something that we're really, really excited about, right? Again, this has always been kind of like the holy grail of, making DePIN a reality and comfortable enough for everyday people to use with privacy included and scalability included through ZK. So yeah, excited for it.
Yeah, super excited, and I can't help it. I need to say it. We're working on something really interesting. We talked to Kuleen about it a couple of weeks ago. There'll be some stuff for our developer communities coming after the holidays, which I'm really excited for. But just to keep it short, because I know we gotta go in a couple of minutes. I'd like Dara to hear your 2 cents on this, on interoperability, ZK, if you feel like it, and scalability in DePINs. And then maybe just one of you guys each, just take 30 seconds to tell me, where does DePIN go from here, and what are you most excited about for 24? I know it's a hard task, but let's see if we can make it. Dara, the floor is yours, though, to start with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with things that Larry was pointing out, especially in the interoperability standpoint. I think DePIN as a whole is obviously naturally connected to physical infrastructure, and being able to verify this data in a privacy preserving way is powerful and is very relevant to a lot of different applications. I know I keep referencing Hivemapper, but being able to verify the location of their devices is something that's extremely important for their network. And for a lot of different networks, it can be within a decentralized ride hailing aspect and just various different ways of being able to connect actual devices to on chain and being able to verify that data in a way that's privacy preserving, but then also secure and can't be spoofed and tricked, basically, which can obviously affect the network in a negative way. And I guess what I'm excited about, just for the DePIN ecosystem as a whole, is to see where it goes, and honestly just to see the different projects that are being built. Working within the DePIN space, a lot of these projects are something first before the actual crypto component, but the crypto component is used to power their network. And you get exposed to so many different industries. And like Kuleen said, they take a very pragmatic approach to it. And it's cool to see that the different problems that they're solving. And this can be within the AI sector with IONET, and they're building a GPU cluster for basically these AI models to train and run computation that's expensive, and just different problems like that. Just really looking forward to see the proliferation and where things go.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that, Dara. And let's go to Kuleen, because I know you got to go. So maybe, let me know what you are excited about. Where does DePIN go from here in 2024? And then if you got to drop off, feel free, and then we'll wrap it up.
I appreciate it. So for me, the thing I'm specifically excited about, and I think this is something Connor had touched on earlier in the conversation, is that I think what's been proven pretty conclusively in my mind is that token incentives work to get a network bootstrapped. They have been shown as a way to engage people and get people to contribute to a network, operate hardware, and help build that network out in the early days. And that's been awesome. And I think now the next phase for DePIN is, can the product that is generated by that bootstrap network, can it be competitive to or better than existing sort of centralized versions of the service? Whether that's wireless networks, mapping data from Hivemapper we touched on, but there's other projects like Nadix that are coming up with slightly different models, or compute networks like those that IONET's facilitating, or others. So I guess for me, the thing I'm just really, really interested to see is some of these networks have now had a little bit of time to get set up, start sort of building that product, and now can they sell it? Can they sort of package it into a thing that is worth buying and like beats the centralized alternatives that people have for these services. So I think we'll see some of that next year, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I'd like to thank you for obviously for participating and sharing your point of views. And yeah, if you gotta go, just feel free. I'll wrap it up with Connor and then Larry after that. Connor,
Awesome.
what are
Thanks,
you
guys.
excited? Yeah, for sure. Our pleasure having you. So Connor, what are you excited about, and where does DePIN go from here in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start off by just piggybacking off of what Kuleen just said in terms of being interested to see demand come onto these networks. Like, is the service or the product provided by them, equally as good or maybe even better than centralized competitors? Like, leaving all the token and decentralization aspects aside, just like how good is the wireless coverage? How good is the map that's built by HiveMapper versus Google Maps? And I mean, I think the answer, at least for HiveMapper, is a pretty resounding yes. So like, it's been super exciting to see them start to get paid demand on their network. Like, I just interviewed Ariel, the founder, for a podcast I help co-host, and we released it the other day. But he was saying that they had multiple 5 and 6 figure deals for data from paying customers, whether they're like autonomous vehicle companies or whether they're other mapping companies even, or rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft, or companies in that category. So I think we're really starting to see some significant paid demand on some of these networks, and that's awesome. I think that's kind of like the evolution of the space, like where we need to go. And I'm also just really excited to see new things be tried out in this bull market, whether it's different token incentive schemes, fair launches, just innovation in even in the DePIN space. I think we definitely don't have everything figured out yet, and so it'll be cool to see projects trying new things, um, referral programs, etc., to grow their networks, to generate value with their networks, to accrue that value to the token and the token holders that helped build the networks. Excited for all of that, and yeah, just really looking forward to seeing the space take off through this bull run. I think we've garnered a lot of attention, and rightfully so, as we are setting up for the next bull run. And I think we should definitely try to capitalize on it over the next few years.
Thanks, Connor. So basically, to Colleen's answer, can we sell it? Your short answer would be yes, I'm guessing. So awesome, great. Larry, let's go to you, and then yeah, I'm just gonna do a quick outro, and wanted to thank Dare, Colleen, and Solana ecosystem, as well as our IoTeX BD for participating, and this has been really interesting and exciting.
Yeah, my predictions for next year, or like what I am excited about, is just the fact that DePIN is now a thing, right? I can't tell you guys what it was like in 2018 through 2020, where you go to a conference and you say, hey, I work in the blockchain and IoT space, or I work in, the Internet of Trusted Things sector, right? When they're like, what is IoT? And I think it took this past 5 years and a really good example of DeFi to simplify crypto in a way that now mass adoption through DePIN, I think, is really possible, right? Like the whole concept of, on-chain money came first, then on-chain collectibles came next. Then the concept of like on-chain machines that create a public utility and reward those that contribute to it was just a little out of reach the last cycle or the past years, as far as something that was intuitive enough to understand. But with all the great examples we have now, with projects like Demo and HiveMapper and Helium and EnviroBlock and some of the other great ones on IoTeX and Solana and all the other ecosystems, the examples of these things working for specific sectors of DePIN are there. And tools like account abstraction that make creating wallets and the user experience side a lot easier for normies to learn about DePIN and experience DePIN. And then finally, all of the ZK technology that's been built and is in the progress of being built by IoTeX and collaborating with Solana on this stuff, that's going to provide the peace of mind and the assurance for people to actually not just try it out, but stay. I think we're ready for a nice wave of DePIN awareness and adoption. And regardless of what people say about hype and price, these things lead more people to be aware of the sector. So hype for the sake of hype is not worth anything, but hype, if it draws top of funnel user acquisition for the DePIN sector as a whole, is exactly what I'm really excited about. So the world is our oyster, I think. I'm really excited to work with Solana and their ecosystem to bring DePIN to the masses, truly.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm not sure if we have time, but Daria, would be interesting in maybe hearing your thoughts on what Larry just mentioned for maybe a minute, and then we say goodbye.
Yeah, no, once again, I agree with this conversation is really interesting to hear different people's perspective. And it's just like really cool to see how basically our visions are aligning. Really excited to partner with IoTeX on just basically the proliferation of DePIN as a whole, and being able to actually help use these infrastructures that are being built out to power their networks. And I completely agree that we are in this cycle where DePIN can be the sector that actually does achieve mass adoption within the crypto landscape. When you talk to people, whether it's people like Congress or just everyday people, about what DePIN is and what these networks do, it's very easy for them to understand, and some of them can actually interact with it as well. When you see the users of these different DePIN networks, it brings a crowd of people that aren't necessarily what we would quote unquote call like crypto native people, but they're interested in whether the incentivization aspect, and they take the time to actually learn about the network. So really excited for what's to come with DePIN as a whole.
Great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And again, I wanted to thank everybody participating, everybody in the audience. I've seen some interesting questions. So if you guys want to, as that we were on stage, want to answer them in your own time later on, that'll be great for our communities. Otherwise, thank you guys, and we'll see you around. It's been great. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.